shot, redirected, score! Game 7, Montez St. Louis! We are going back to Tampa Bay! A Cavalier spinning, a Cavalier looking, trying to drop it off, brings it in himself, left it in the middle, shot,
Welcome back to another episode of Quick Strikes. My name is Michael Wax. I will be your host for this episode, and I am joined by my co-hosts Jake Ricker and Philip Wunderlich. How are you guys?
Doing great. After that win, we're excited. We finally beat our kryptonite, ready to go.
Hey, play that gravy train, right? I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Round 2, baby. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And before we go on to things that will be, we have to go back and see what was in Game 5. So to start with the game, the Bolts actually looked really, really good. They had a couple of quality opportunities, which included Jonas Korpisalo absolutely robbing Cedric Paquette on a cross-crease pass from Patrick Maroon. Korpisalo looked like he was going to be that Game 1 type dominant player once again. And the Lightning found their way to put a little, hole in his armor. Just a couple of minutes in, Tyler Johnson, after a face-off win, was parked right in front of the net and took Eric Chernak's slap shot and deflected it right past Korpisalo for the 1-0 lead.
Yeah, Bolts played really well at the beginning of this period. When you first watch the start of this game, you're thinking the Lightning are here to end this series. They do not want this to continue, and they want to put the demons away from last year. And they look really good. It was a great play all around, and it was good to see them get off to a good start.
Yeah, go Johnny, go. He has into playoff form. I mean, the way that Johnson plays in the playoffs is completely different than the regular season. Regular season is almost absent, but when it comes to playoffs like this and big moments, he's there to shine.
Yeah, and that goal moved Johnson up to second in 2019-20 playoff scoring, or at least goal scoring, behind Braden Point with 3 goals so far. And then Blake Coleman got off the schneid just a couple of minutes later, getting his first goal as a Tampa Bay Lightning member from another newcomer in Zach Bogosian off that pass. And they capitalized off a turnover. They looked really, really good in those first couple of minutes.
Yeah, Blake Coleman has been awesome too these last couple of games. I mean, he's been great, I think, for us ever since he got here, but he's really turned on the scoring lately. So now he got his first goal today. So, but he's played really well. So I'm very happy to see Coleman get on the board and his presence really start to become known in the playoffs. So that's huge to see him get going.
Yeah, I'd mentioned about with Eric too. This is what we really acquired Coleman for too. Not only the intangibles, but he has a really good sense of where the puck's at all times, and the way that he scores the goals. I mean, I talked about last time with the one-hander. I mean, this is a great goal too. I mean, it's no one-hander, but still can't complain about a 2-0 lead here.
Exactly, and unfortunately, before the end of the first period, the Lightning started to get into penalty trouble. And while this wasn't a power play goal, it was actually 1 second after the power play expired. Nick Foligno got his second goal of the playoffs from Winberg and Atkinson, and it looked like Cirelli just lost his man. And, before Cirelli's heroics, we'll get to later, he was having a pretty rough game.
This is where the Lightning started to lose control of this game. I know, we'll get to this in a minute with the second period, but, a lot of people were not happy with the Lightning's performance for a large part of this game. And this is where it started to turn. After, Columbus got those power plays, and they ended up getting that goal right after the power play. The Lightning, they weren't able to stop Columbus. Columbus had pressure, and they kept putting on the pressure, and they had their foot all the way on the gas, full speed ahead. And, it was not a good end of the period and not something you want to see. And you're right. Cirelli did struggle in this game. He's been a really good player for the Lightning, and when you have guys like that who are even struggling, it hurts you a lot.
Yeah, Anthony Cirelli is one of my favorite players, and to see him struggle like that, it's upsetting. But like you said, he redeems himself later on in this game.
Yeah, and at the end of the first period, the shots were 10-7 Columbus. So even though Columbus was favoring in the shots, I really thought the Lightning played better for the majority of the first period.
Agreed.
But that trend did not continue into the second. We go to just a couple minutes in, and Steenland gets his first of the playoffs, his first career playoff goal, I believe, from Jones and Atkinson. And this was a power play goal, and everybody was just standing still, and it allowed him to get that rebound and tie the game.
Yeah, it looked like almost time stopped, like they were expecting a whistle or something, which is just something you cannot do, especially in the playoffs. So this was a frustrating goal, but at this point it's tied 2-2, so you're not overly freaking out yet. But again, Columbus just had their foot on the gas, and the Lightning, even when they got control of the puck, they weren't able to hold it, and they would constantly kept losing it. They couldn't get any breakouts going, and Columbus just was all over them.
Yeah, it was a sloppy play to begin with, and having Wenberg score like that, it's not good.
Well, we get just a little bit more towards the end of the second period, and Winberg does put one in the back of the net. Gavrikov and Foligno get the assist. There was no spacing on the 3-2 goal, which really was a microcosm of how bad the Lightning's defensive play was in the second period. And Kucherov made a really poor choice by sucker punching one of the Columbus players right before the goal was scored. So, he was having a rough game at the end of the second period too. And just overall, things were looking really, really bad.
Well, I will say this too about the whole sucker punch thing. Brian on the Fox Sports broadcast was saying they need to get in somebody's face, and because Columbus kept going right to the front of the net and winning that inside position, and that's how they ended up getting some of those goals too. But the Lightning needed to get physical and tell Columbus, no, you cannot be in front of our goaltender like that. And that was a big part of the problem. They just weren't. There were a couple of hits there, which I was like, okay, maybe here's something, but I mean, they were little scrums and nothing really went for it. And the Lightning were just getting frustrated. They were getting frustrated. They continued to take stupid penalties, which were penalties, by the way. I know we'll get into that in just a minute, but it was a frustrating period for sure. This was probably the worst period the Lightning have played in the whole series, but they definitely need to step up. And I'll get to something in a minute here, but it was a bad period, not a bad game.
Yeah, I agree. And starting to see the trend here. There was 2 dumb plays in a row, and this is what happens now. Columbus is already leading 3-2.
Yeah, and that second period, as you mentioned, Jake, was probably their worst of the playoffs and one of their worst of the season. They got outshot 24-8 in the second, which is just unacceptable. It reminds me of that December game against Montreal where they got outshot 18-2 and were fortunate to only be down 1 goal, just like they were at the end of this period. And towards the second intermission, and we didn't find out about this until after the game, but John Cooper and Kevin Shattenkirk really set the tone for that third period. And I forgot to mention, I apologize. John Cooper taking a timeout after the 2-2 goal was a very, very smart decision. But another very smart decision that he made was during the second intermission, him and Shattenkirk really had a conversation with everybody. And I think that really helped turn the tide, even though there was another goal scored.
Credit to this team. I've often talked about, and people covering the Lightning have often talked about how they don't panic. They're very good at not worrying and staying in the game, and they come back from these games a lot. And I'm glad to see Cooper. I know I'm a big Cooper supporter. So I knew he would do something like this, but it's good to see that he stood up and was like, listen, we're having a bad period. I don't know exactly what was said in the locker room, but Shattenkirk too, stepping up too. That's big. That's part of the reason we acquired him, is to be that leader. He's got the playoff experience that some of these younger rookies don't. And it worked. It worked because we're talking about this third period coming up here, but great job by those guys stepping up in the locker room and saying what needed to be said.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Jake. I think that has to do a lot with leadership too. Shattenkirk is definitely a leader in that locker room, and having leaders like him is really important, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, I look at Shattenkirk, and he really fills that leadership role that was eventually undone with the departures of Dan Girardi and Ryan Callahan, both ex Rangers and Lightning members. Shattenkirk fills that role and really turned the tide in this game. And speaking of this game, we go into the third, which I would argue was a very good period for the Lightning, but it starts off on a bad foot with the Shattenkirk Sergachev pairing out there with a brutal turnover by Blake Coleman. Sergachev tripping Andre Vasilevsky and and Bjorkstrand uh, getting the rebound and putting it in the back of the net after a Dubois chant Gavrikov with the second assist.
Yeah, this was a devastating goal, obviously, for a number of reasons, because a lot of fans were basically ready to throw in the towel. And this was something that kind of drove me nuts a little bit, and I want to talk about here too, is that people were ready to move on for Game 6 from this point. But as I mentioned before, the Lightning are a great team at staying calm, and despite this goal, I was saying on Twitter after the second period, it's not over. The Lightning played a good first period, and despite the bad second, if they come out and they win this third period, they're going to win the game. They will go out and they will win the game, and then they win the series. This is not a situation we were down 0-3, about to be swept again. We're up 3-1. So, even worst case scenario where we lose this game, it's not over. There's still a Game 6. So, and credit to the Lightning here. This is a test that why they are such a good team is because they stood with it, and despite this goal, they still kept fighting, and they came back in this game, which we'll get to in just a second here.
Yeah, I think that was like I said, it kind of reminded me of an episode of Keystone Cops. I know you guys probably don't know that show, but it's like you're tripping over your own people, and it's just a mess, right? And you can't be doing that, especially in a playoff game. And it shows up here in a 4-2 lead, but luckily we get back into it.
Yeah, and the catalyst for getting back into it, even though he sort of was responsible for that 4-2 goal and his defensive lapse, was Kevin Shattenkirk. Got the Kucherov feed in the offensive zone and had a rocket in between the arm and the leg of Eunice Corpusalo to get the Lightning back within one. So really taking that leadership role and doing something with it.
This was a huge goal for the Lightning, obviously for many reasons. Anytime getting a goal is gonna increase your momentum. And I want to talk about too, prior to this goal, the Lightning did a really good job of getting the flow back, and this is also partly due to Columbus's downfall, taking their foot off the gas pedal and letting the Lightning do this. But they got pucks into the offensive zone and got some chances. But I think a rocket is even an understatement from this shot from Shattenkirk. It was a great shot. He blasted this one and put in a good spot and went right into the net. So it great job by Shattenkirk there for not only leading his team after the second period, but obviously being a big part of that goal there.
Yeah, going at 4-2, I was pretty scared. I'm like, oh god, here we go again. But seeing Shattenkirk show up on the score sheet was huge, and I know you mentioned Kucherov too, and he got the assist as well, so he's starting to show up too.
Yeah, and he definitely showed up for that tying goal. They really, really pressured at 6-on-5, and they got kind of lucky. Let's be honest. Braden Point's pass to Anthony Cirelli goes off of Cirelli's foot and to the back of the net. They tied the game on the 6-on-5, and we'll get to the history of it in a little bit. But what did you guys think of the goal itself?
What are you talking about, Michael? That was pure skill and 100% intended. I don't know what you're talking about with luck. No, listen, this is we talk about. I was talking about Columbus getting the inside position early in the game and how they were able to fight and get in front of Vassy. Cirelli did the same thing here. Johnson has gotten almost all of his goals, I believe, in front of the net and tipping pucks in the net. Cirelli did the same thing here. You got to get bodies in front of the net and putting shots on net. Sometimes you tip it. They talk about all the time on broadcast, put the puck on net. Something could bounce your way, and that's exactly what they did. And this one went in, and they were rewarded for it. They played a really good third period. So this was a great goal. I love this goal too because I was watching it with my family, and it almost went in slow motion. I could see it just crossing the line. It was super exciting to see that puck go in and know, hey, I told you that we got a chance at this game. So that was a great goal and a great job by Cirelli at being in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, I don't care how it goes in, as long as it goes in, that's all that matters. I know you guys mentioned about playoff. I mean, not playoff. Net front presence, and that play by Cirelli. I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And that's when that went in, and he was in front of the net, so it's perfect.
Yeah, and talked about history, said we would get back to it, and so Nikita Kucherov on that goal got a secondary assist, and he has now taken the lead over Martin St. Louis with the most playoff points in Lightning history, and he would finish with one more before the game was over. The shots at the end of the third period were 40-22, so a little bit better, but it's not great giving up 40 shots in regulation to the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Hey, credit to Vasi, though. He played a good game. Again, I mean, he's played great every game. I say this all the time, but, 40 shots and Vasi stood strong, despite the 4 goals. A lot of them weren't necessarily his fault, but another good game from him.
Oh, he was. Oh, sorry, Phil.
Yeah, that was huge. Like you said, it was a brilliant play.
Well, I mean, he was the best player on the ice. Kucherov did have 3 points. Cirelli had that big goal, but Vasilevsky is the rock of this team, and we saw last year. And I hate bringing up last year, but if he is not successful, the team is not successful. And I really think he took that loss to heart last year. I really think Kucherov did as well. And both of them had fantastic games. So let's get in the overtime real quick. Braden Point is the overtime hero. Just a couple minutes into the game, gets behind the defense for the second time off of a turnover from Nikita Kucherov. He was fantastic in the offensive zone in this game. And, Point made a nifty little move, got it by the blocker of Korpisalo, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, Bolts came out in this overtime here and continued the play they did in the third period. Got into the offensive zone, got control of the puck, got some opportunities, and great job to Point getting in front of the net and he was wide open, obviously because it was a fluke, because the one Columbus player wasn't able to handle the pass. And also, I saw some people talking about this. Palat was to the right of Braden Point, and it was probably a good thing he didn't end up passing it. A lot of guys might have tried to make that extra pass to Palat to give him a chance to put that in, but Point made an amazing move and put that and buried that thing. There was no chance. As soon as I saw him get that puck in front of the net, I basically knew it was over. So really great to see we were able to beat Columbus, winning this series 4-1. Very happy, and the guys seemed so excited in the celebration, which was great to see.
Yeah, I thought the way that Vasi was celebrating, I thought he was going to knock Kucherov over. But it's good to see. Like I said before the show even started, I said this was our kryptonite, and we finally beat him. Superman came up on top.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kucherov and Vasilevsky almost destroying each other's ankles on that play, and it was so lethargic to see those two, who really, really struggled last year in that playoff series, were visibly the most frustrated, whether it was during the playoffs or at the award ceremony, get their comeuppance. They played so well in this series, and that leads me to my first post-game note, which is that, Zach, I'm sorry, I was wrong about Nikita Kucherov. He had that breakout game that we talked about him not having so far. 3 pretty good assists. One of them was a secondary assist, but 3 really good passes. I was just thinking that if he wasn't the one to pass it to Braden Point, if he was the one to receive it, he would have passed it to Palat. He is one of those types of players that would have done that. But, he had a very, very good game. You saw it in the offensive zone. He had multiple turnovers in a good way in the offensive zone. Still a couple of bad turnovers, but we can live with it if that's the type of performance we're going to get.
Yeah, Cooch was great. And for those of you who may not know what Michael is referring to, I will link the video up in the top right here. But check out our latest podcast with Zach, where we got to talk to him, and Michael and him had a fun conversation about Nikita Kucherov. So be sure to check that video out. But yeah, Kucherov was great. Also, speaking of celebrations too, I want to add John Cooper, his little fist pump at the end after the handshake line. That was great. Cooper is, he's with the guys too, and remembers last year and is frustrated from it, and he was excited to get this win. That was really cool to see as well.
One other thing that we want to talk about before we get to our final big piece is the penalties. There was a giant disparity in penalties. Overall, it was 6-0 in favor of Columbus. There was only one penalty called on Columbus, which resulted in a 4-on-4, because of course it did. And Jake, you were mentioning this earlier, and Eric Erlinson mentioned this as well during his recap of the game. Those were penalties. However, Columbus got nothing called against them, and that was sort of insane, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, and listen, you said it. They were penalties. They were dumb penalties too, and that's something the Lightning have struggled with. And that's my negative from this game, is that the Lightning did not do a good job staying out of the penalty box. But you're right, they were penalties. And I'll listen. Excuse me. I was listening to the hockey guys recap of this game, and he was talking about these penalties happen because Columbus controlled this game, especially in the end of the first and second period. And when that's happening, you're going to see players take silly penalties because they're getting frustrated and they're in their heads. So I'm fine with the calls on the Lightning, but yes, you're right. The frustrating part is that there were some blatant calls. Like, one that comes to mind is the trip on Coleman that wasn't called. And when you can go that long without a power play, it's a game changer. I've mentioned this multiple times in videos, especially in 2020 with no fans in the arena. Power play can easily have a huge effect on the momentum of this game. So it's frustrating to see. Now, at the end of the day, we end up winning this game and winning the series, so it doesn't really matter. You can never blame the refs at the end of the day for a loss. But it's frustrating, and you just hope to see that it can get fixed. Although I don't have much faith right now.
Yeah, I don't know. You see the in the beginning period, you see Point getting elbowed in the face and no call whatsoever. So I don't know. Like you say, Jake, I don't know if it's going to be fixed. But at the same time, like, I feel like they have to do better than what they're doing right now, because you have Columbus getting those penalties against us, but not vice versa. So it's insane.
It was very, very frustrating to watch, and hopefully they're better next round. But and I might regret saying this, but it looks like our opponent next round is going to be Boston. So it will not get better, knowing our history against Boston.
Hey, unless Montreal can pull off the impossible and somehow win this against Philly, I believe they're still winning. So
I think you're forgetting, Jake, that Montreal is also an original 6 team. So I don't know if it's going to be that much better.
Fair enough. That's true.
So no matter what, you're going to play an original 6.
Yeah.
Unless Washington comes back and win, then we end up playing Washington. But that who knows? It's a little too early to tell. But it'll more than likely be Boston.
Tampa Bay against the world, guys. Tampa Bay against the world. So for our final little piece before we do our positive and negative, like we do in every single game, we just want to take a quick second to talk about Rick Peckham. This is his final game as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he was awesome in this game. I am so glad that I got to hear him and Brian have one final game before he retired. And I'm very glad that Fox Sports decided to pick them up for the first round of the playoffs. His OT call for Braden Point will live on in history, I think, his final one at least, because it is his last call and it is so good. But, from the bottom of my heart, Rick Peckham, thank you. I know I said this in my tweet thanking him, but he is one of the reasons that I wanted to become a broadcaster in the first place. I loved listening to him and Bobby the Chief Taylor originally. They were the original duo that I listened to.
Yep.
But you just think of how long he's been doing this, how many games he's been covering the Lightning for, and it's not going to be the same, no matter who it is, even if it's someone that's amazing.
Yeah, you echoed this in the tweet that you sent out on Bay Bolts, and I'm right there with you. he is an inspiration to me, a big idol for me. For as I want to be a sports broadcaster as well. He's such an amazing Lightning broadcaster, and you hit it on the head too. All these years, I mean, he's been with the Lightning for a very, very long time, which is something you don't see too often anymore either, especially when it comes to hockey players. So to be able to grow up listening to him and the Chief, as you mentioned earlier, it was an honor, really. And it really won't be the same. It's a shame to see you go. I wish he could cover more of the playoffs, but I'm glad it ended the way it did. I think him in that OT call, he's so good with those Braden Point goals. They're so much fun, so much energy. He really brings you to the edge of your seat. So yeah, huge shout out to Rick. He is awesome. I wish him the best, and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, I mean, we all grew up watching him as Lightning fans. So it's going to be really sad not knowing that he's going to be there next year, and it's going to whoever takes over is going to have some real big shoes to fill. It's never easy to see someone like that leave the organization, but it's time to retire, time to live his life too. So we wish the best to him.
Yeah, and just a quick note, he has been broadcasting for the Lightning longer than I have been alive, so that makes me feel kind of young, I'm going to be honest. But big thanks to Rick Peckham for everything he's done. Hopefully, in the next time that the Lightning are able to put fans in the arena, we will have a banner with a microphone for Rick Peckham.
100%.
Now, what we want to do at the end, of course, is our positive and negative for each game. Jake, I know you mentioned your negative already, so maybe reiterate your negative and go with your positive.
Yeah, my negative, as I mentioned before, was the penalties. This is something that the Lightning have got to fix and is going to kill them if it continues. You can't be taking stupid penalties, bottom line. I mean, these are easy corrections. Today it was that Columbus got in their head and they got frustrated and took some silly penalties. But listen, you're going to take penalties, and we're not, and especially as a team that doesn't get many power play opportunities, you really do have to limit those as much as you can. We are a team that takes a lot of penalties too. In the regular season, I believe we were like fifth or second in penalties. So this is a common theme with this team. That's something they've got to correct and for the future. So in those games where we don't have much offense, we're not getting buried so much, and momentum's not swinging so much in the other team's favor. My positive though is the way the Lightning came back in this game, and they stood strong. They're so good at that. This second period, especially this, even when Columbus scored that goal to go up 4-2. People wrote them off. People were ready to go to game 6. They stood with it. They kept trying. They took over that third period and overtime and ended up winning this game. So that's my positive.
Yeah. I'm going to say my negative is the silly plays that almost lost us the game today. You can't be running over your goaltender. You can't be tripping over your own people. Like that can't happen, especially if you're going to play a team like Boston. They're going to destroy you. And then for my positive, I'm going to say Nikita Kucherov. I know you bashed on him a little bit, Mike, and I think you regret it now, but at the same time, he shows up when he needs to, and it was really big how he showed up today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very happy with the way that Nikita Kucherov played. I'm happy that Sorelli got the monkey off his back. Same with Blake Coleman. My positive goes to Andrei Vasilevsky. He was unbelievable. I know the stats may not show it. 902 save percentage is not that good in terms of the grand scheme of things, but he was unbelievable. He had a couple of multiple stop series where he would stop 3 or 4 shots in a row. The goals, you can't really blame him when he's getting tripped or he's being screened by someone who's just not doing anything and prohibiting him from seeing the puck. So I thought Vasilevsky throughout this entire series was very, very good. But specifically in this game, it gave the Lightning a chance to win. And I was so happy to see him in the post-game reaction give his raw emotion, which is the best kind of emotion you can ask for when it comes to someone like Vasilevsky, who doesn't like to show it very often. My negative, you already went with the penalties. So I am going to go with, and I know he sparked the Lightning, but the Shattenkirk-Sergachev pairing was brutal for the majority of the game. They were on the ice for 3 of the goals against for Columbus. And yes, Shattenkirk did get that 3rd goal and did have that emotional and motivational speech during the second intermission, but they weren't good enough for the majority of the game. So I gotta say that is my negative. Although, they did help us win. So that's the negative, then it's okay.
True. And also, real too, before we get to the outro here, I want to throw a question to our viewers. I want to know, what is your favorite Rick Peckham moment? So be sure to comment down below what your favorite call from his or favorite moment from his time with the Lightning is down in the comments below. Would love to see him.
Yeah, and if you have anything else to say, make sure to leave it in the comments down below, whether it's about our graphics, our video, our audio, or just joining in the conversation. And thanks again to Phil and Jake for joining me on this episode of Thunderstruck. We will see you guys again for round 2, but once again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on the video. You can also follow us on Twitter at @Bay_Bolt and go and see our articles on the Puck Network. And we'll see you guys again for round 2, which will be in a couple of days.